Hello friends, this is Deepa from DeeZinesByD and I'm super excited to be sharing this card with you today on the ScrapbookPal YouTube channel. This winter theme card features the Catherine Pooler Wrapped and Ready Stamps and Coordinating Dies. Now this set is really fun to use because it has this nice big stamp with this car and bundled gifts on the roof. I thought this would be perfect to use as a focal point on a nicely ink blended wintry scene background. So these are the stamps and coordinating dies that I'm going to be using. I have some Versamark there, that's optional for you, and some VersaFine Onyx Black and Memento Tuxedo Black, along with my Copic Chow markers. You will also need a blending brush because we'll be doing some ink blending with some oxides, which I'll show you later on. And these are two cardstock panels that I'll be using. This one is 6 3/4 by 4 3/4 to make a 5 by 7 card in the end. And then this other panel I'm going to use to stamp out that lovely car and gifts. So I'm going to line this up in my MISTI here. And I've decided to use a stamp positioner because I may have to stamp this one a few times to get a nice black outlined image. So I will be using the Tuxedo Memento Black to stamp this out because I will be doing some Copic coloring with this. And this ink is perfect for Copic coloring because it will not smudge or make a mess with your alcohol markers. So I am going to go ahead and stamp this out. And as you can see, I'm going to have to do that a couple times, but I noticed that my stamp it's 100% new, so I have to kind of prep it a bit, and this Tombow Mono Sandy eraser works perfectly for this. You just rub it across the top of your stamp and then wipe it off a bit, and when you go to ink it again, it stamps much better than it did if you hadn't prepped it before. Now I do recommend letting this image dry a little bit because it can smudge if it isn't completely dry, and if you are worried, you can always hit it with a heat tool quickly to just double check and make sure that you're not going to get any smudging or smearing. So I'm going to go ahead and color in this beautiful little car, and I'm going to just use some grays and keep the coloring of the car a bit simple because I want to focus more on the presents when I do my coloring because I want that to be a bit more colorful and kind of stand out more on the front of the card. Now I will be listing all of the colors that I'm using in the top left corner of my screen if you do not get a chance to actually see what they are as I show them and I go along and color this beautiful image. So I'm not doing anything too crazy with my coloring. I'm just using the darkest color that I have and sort of coloring where I think there would be more shadows or darker areas. Then I go over with the medium colored marker and I will blend out the darker into the medium and move it a little further on my paper. Then once I'm done that, I will use my lightest color to blend out from the darkest to the medium to the lightest, and just the lightest color helps me blend out the rest of the colors. Once I'm done with that, I go back with my darkest marker just to kind of emphasize those darker areas because it will get a bit washed out as you're blending, and this just helps you make sure that your darks stand out along with your whites, which gives you some nice gradients and variation of color on your card. So here I just use that BG10 with the colorless blender to kind of blend that out to create that nice little sheen on the windshield, and I'm going to kind of do the same thing with the lights, and I'm doing this tip to tip technique here, but you don't really need to do that. You can just use a colorless blender to blend out that yellow to make it go and fade into white, but I did want to keep the entire light yellow, so that's why I kind of used that tip to tip method there. Now I will color in the presents. So this is the fun part about Copic coloring, I find. What I tend to do and what helps me in my Copic coloring is I find a color scheme. So I'll find a card or even just a picture with colors that I really like, and then what I'll do is I match up my markers to those colors. And because I already have the image of these colors working well together, I know it's going to work well on my image as well. So that's what I did here. I basically found a card that I thought looked really nice, and I took those colors and I used them with my Copic Chow markers to use this color scheme on my own card. Now, if you're adventurous enough, you can go ahead and create your own color schemes, but I always sort of stick with stuff that I know because I'm not that great of a Copic colorer. As you can see, I just do like general blending here. Now, these are smaller images, so you don't actually have to use 3 colors like I did. You can just use a couple. I used the 3 because I like that blended effect from the darker to the lighter color. And I thought that some of the areas on these presents are a little larger, so they would look really nice with that effect. Now, that being said, I have picked colors that are kind of close to each other to do that blending, but when I get to the BV colors, the blue violets, I have more of a blue color as my darkest color. And that's not going to mess up my color blend at all, because what I will do is I will go over that color that doesn't quite fit but is still close with the two colors that are similar, which are the BVs. And this blends out that color that's a little different by mixing the two colors that are similar and kind of just giving it a complete gradient. And it works very well. So don't be too afraid to kind of mix colors that are a little different, but still close. Like I will mix a blue with a BV, or I will mix a violet with a BV. And it just helps you create a bit more of a change in color when you're making these little blends here. Now, this is a really fun image to do this with because you can use whatever colors you want. And it's very fun because you can pick lots of different vibrant colors, which work well with presents. So this is the final result that you get here. And the next step that I'm going to do is I'm going to line up my die on top of that. I use some washi tape to stick that down, and I will put that through my die cutting machine. Once I've done that, this is the die cut that I get, which looks really, really nice. So let's move on to the background. I'm going to be using this Distress Oxide Salvaged Patina. So this is one of the newer colors, which I really, really like. And I think it makes a really nice snowy background color. So I decided to ink blend this onto my background. Now this is that 6 3/4 by 4 3/4 panel. Now you can use whatever size you like. I know that the A2 size panel is the most popular, but I actually like to make my cards a little bigger. This is why I stick to an A7 size card, which is 7 inches by 5 inches. So I'm just ink blending that on the top half of my card, and I'm keeping the darkest area towards the top. Now I'm just going to kind of make sure that I've got enough color on there to sort of create the background for my die cut image. And I decided to use these oxides because they're perfect to blend out a color into white like this. Now I want to add some snowy little droplets. So that little bottle there has some water in it. I'm just going to sprinkle some drops on there and then use a dry towel to absorb them. You can see it makes a nice, the oxides make that nice snowy effect. Now I wasn't completely satisfied with the Salvaged Patina, so I went ahead and grabbed my Peacock Feathers, and I just decided to add a little bit of this onto the very edge on the top and two corners, just to kind of draw your eye a little more into the center of that card. Now I'm going to go ahead and stamp out the sentiment. The sentiment is also from the Wrapped and Ready stamp set. These sentiments work perfectly, and I find that they work great for the front and the inside of the card. Now I'm going to use my MISTI to stamp out the sentiment with some VersaFine Onyx Black ink. And I find that the trick to this ink is to always stamp it 2 times, especially when you have bigger print or bigger sentiments like this. It's a little more blocky, so you have a bit more ink going on there. So that 2 times is the trick for me. It works perfectly every time as long as I stamp it twice. So now that I've got that on there, I'm actually going to let this dry because I really don't want it to smudge on that white background. And I'm going to move on to the inside of the card. Now this hopefully is a treat for you. I do decorate the insides of my cards, and I love showing that. This one I'm going to keep a little simple, and I've actually got a piece of cardstock here that I'm using as my edge just to create like a line, and then I'm using that Salvaged Patina again to kind of create like a surface, kind of like a tabletop or like a floor, something like that. And what I want to do is keep my heaviest color towards the left side of that panel, and again blend that out into the white towards the center. Now you see that creates that little edge or floor is how I'm going to use it here. So I'll go ahead and grab that little tree from the stamp set. I really liked this tree, so I felt I had to use it. I couldn't make a card and not include this. So I set that there on that ink blended area. And I'm going to, again, use the VersaFine Onyx Black. Now, this was a little bit of a mistake that I made. I'm going to be coloring in the little ornaments on this tree, so it would probably be better to use the Memento Tuxedo Black, which again is the alcohol coloring safe ink. But I do want to note that I did heat this the VersaFine ink, and once it was heat set, I didn't get any smudging at all. So that's also a good little fact to know. So now I have that other that other sentiment that is to you and yours, and that's what I'm going to use for the inside of my card. Again, I will stamp that out with the VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and as I said, 2 times a charm. I'll ink that up twice and stamp that out with my positioner here. And that's the image that you get on the inside. So I am going to continue with the same colors that I used in the beginning, but I'm just going to use 2 colors from each set that I used for my color scheme to kind of color in all the little baubles and ornaments on this cute little Christmas tree here. Once again, I've listed all of the colors in the top left corner for you, and they will all be linked below in the description. Now, I found that this tree was just one of the many cute little images that are included in this Wrapped and Ready stamp set. You could have used a little gathering of gifts or some of the little ornament decorations to kind of just create a nice little decoration on the inside of your card. And I always find that this little bit of coordination of the inside of my card to the front always makes a huge difference, and it goes a long way. It really doesn't take me that much longer, and it just kind of completes my card. And as you can see, it doesn't take up too much room. So if you're worried about having space to write a little message or anything that you want to maybe include on the inside of your card, you still have tons of space to do that. So I'm finishing off this little tree with that cute little star on the top, and that's what the final inside of the card ends up looking like. Now I'll let that dry a little bit and I'll go back to the card front. I just have to attach this nicely colored die cut here, and I'm using these foam squares, and I love them because they come in like a variety of sizes. I can use those bigger squares for the larger area and stick those tiny little squares in the tires there. Now, I'm just going to eyeball it. You can measure, and I mean, I have the sentiment as my guide, so I'm just going to kind of stick this car on with the sentiment kind of in between the tires there. And you can see it creates that nice little bit of dimension. I'll use my Tombow dot runner to adhere this panel to the front, and you can see I've got that nice white border around the edge as well. You could have popped that up with a bit more foam tape, but it's completely up to you. Now the final thing that I have to do is to embellish this card, and I'm going to be using some diamond stickles to do this. Now this is a beautiful color because it actually glistens, just like snow glistens, and it is hard to see as the card is flat down like here, but once I'm done, I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like, and it just looks so beautiful. Another tip that I've picked up is that instead of just putting that snow in the background, also put it on top of your car and your gifts, because the snow is going to fall on everything, right? So I'm using a bit of those stickles on the windshield there, on the fender. I'll put some as like mounds around the winter tires of that car, and it just creates that nice wintry feel that I want for this background and for the foreground as well. So once I'm done with all those little snow dots there, and you can see they like pop off the panel there and look perfect, I'm going to be using some Pinkfresh Studio Glacier Jewels. And I'm not going to be adding too many because there are all those beautiful dots in the background, but I did want these to highlight that sentiment because it's just a little bit too much white for me. So these beautiful jewels are just going to glisten just like the snow in the background, and they're just going to shine that AB color that they have on top of them. Now that's what makes them so versatile. They work great with all cards because they just pick up the color of the background and work perfectly. So there's the finished product, and I hope you all enjoyed this tutorial. I hope that you were inspired to use these products to create some cards of your own. The featured stamp set is available in the ScrapbookPal store, and all links have been listed in the description below. Please don't forget to subscribe to the ScrapbookPal YouTube channel and hit that notification bell to be notified of future tutorials. Have a great day, and I hope to see you again next time.